Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow, or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch, and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Hi everyone, it's Catherine. Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan. My name's Catherine Erdley. I am your host today, as well as the founder of the Resilient Retail Club, which is my membership group and mastermind for product businesses. Go check it out at resilientretailclub.com. And if you use the code 10podcast, that's 10podcast, you can get £10 off your first month in the club. Today, I am talking about cash flow. There's two reasons I wanted to record this episode. The first was because I had read a report from Small Business Britain that said that 38% of small businesses were concerned and felt that cash flow was their biggest concern. The second reason was that I posted an Instagram post last week all about your October cash flow, and I was overwhelmed by the number of people who said that they didn't realize it wasn't just them that struggled at this time of year. So I felt like this would be a good opportunity to record a podcast episode and share with you that if you're finding cash flow tricky right now in October as a product business, then you are not alone. So today I am going to talk about why October is so hard for product businesses. And then I'm also going to talk about some things that you can look at and ways that I work. For example, when I'm working with people one-to-one as part of my mastermind, what are some of the things that I look at and how do I manage cash flow in the businesses of my clients? So let's start off with why is it so hard right now? Well, it's fairly self-explanatory when you think about it. You've got lots of money going out to cover you for upcoming sales in the festive season, and yet you have not had those sales yet. This is a very common pinch point. Most big retailers that I've worked for, we're talking about retailers turning over £100 million plus. We would always have a pinch point in September and October where all of the Christmas stock had got to be paid for, but we hadn't had the Christmas sales. It is just a classic case of lots of things going out and you then are waiting for that money to come back in. And it is nerve-wracking. It never, ever seems to just be a smooth walk in the park. You always have to hold your nerve. You always have to be super aware of how much you're spending, and it is not easy. For example, when I worked for Paper Chase, we used to have this meeting back in the spring, and it was called the 4Ps, pushing payments past peak. And basically the purpose of this meeting was to see what we could do, either the merchandising team or the buying team working with the supplier to see where they could push back the payments so that we didn't have as much of a pinch point in this September-October timeframe, because this is a very common situation. And how do big retailers deal with it? They take loans, or they have lines of credit with their bank. And not only that, are they in a line of credit for most of the year, which is what a lot of people don't realize, is that around this time of year, September, October time, they actually hit the bottom of their line of credit. So for example, when we were trying to push the payments past peak at Paper Chase, then it wasn't so much about trying to avoid having to borrow money to bring the stock in. It was about trying to avoid going past the bottom of their line of credit. So this is the way that large retailers operate when it comes to dealing with these seasonal peaks and troughs. So obviously I am not advocating everyone runs out and gets a loan. You have to be obviously very mindful of what you can afford in your business. But all I'm saying is that if you feel like you need a loan to cover your Christmas stock and you feel like somehow this means that you've failed, well, the answer is it's not that at all. It's just that's the way it works, because it's very, very hard to do it any other way. And when I worked in the States in particular, one of the things that I was always told, and whether or not it's true, I don't know, but I was always told that the meaning of the phrase Black Friday was actually that was the day that the retailers went into the black. So the rest of the year they were in the red, they were operating at a loss. But when it came to Black Friday and when they were getting all of those sales coming in for people coming and buying their Christmas presents, that was when the business would go into the black. And therefore that was why it was known as Black Friday. So whether or not that's true, who knows? But it's a really good indicator of just how widespread this issue is. So to recap then, if you are feeling the pinch right now, you are not only not alone, you are part of an extremely common phenomenon in the retail industry. What can you do about it? What options do you have other than to feel stressed each year? Well, firstly, just to reiterate that if it is a situation where you've had to take out some kind of line of credit or loan or something like that, then you're not alone at all. And this is very common practice. It is the way that a lot of people deal with this seasonal fluctuation. But I'd also think that it's an opportunity to talk a little bit more detail about cash flow. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are lots and lots of businesses who find this the most challenging thing about running a business. And product businesses are no different. In fact, if anything, product businesses are probably the hardest to run in terms of when it comes to cash flow, because you constantly have to have stock payments going out and then stock payments coming into you. So, here's what I'd do if I were working with you on your cash flow. The first thing I'd do is take a bit of a step back and look at the three main areas that impact cash flow. If you've read my book, Tame Your Tiger, How to Stop Your Product Business Eating You Alive, then you'll recognize the three areas that I'm talking about. But effectively, it is your profit margins, how much money you're making every time you make a sale, the amount of stock that you're carrying, and also the fixed costs in your business. So those are three areas that have a direct impact on your cash flow. So cash flow is a multi-layered issue. There's lots of different pieces to it, between forecasting cash flow and between looking at the fundamental underlying health of the business, if you like, in terms of the finances. So there's lots of different pieces to it, which is probably why it's one of the things that is hardest for people to get their hands around, because often we're looking at single pieces of the puzzle rather than the whole puzzle all put together. So you may be having a conversation with your accountant after the fact at the end of the year, from looking at the year gone by and looking at what's been going on. You may be looking at your current sales, but what you're not seeing is all of it pulled together. And therefore, that's why it can be quite hard to get a handle on your cash flow. So I recommend starting with these three factors, digging into them in your business and understanding a bit more about what is going on, because the better your profit margins, the better your cash flow, the more cash rich your business feels. The less stock that you're carrying, the more cash rich your business feels. The more tightly controlled all of your other expenses are, all your fixed expenses, and managed and compared to how much you can actually support as a business, then the more likely you are to have enough cash as well. I'd say that for product business owners, the majority are struggling with either their profit margins not being high enough. I'd definitely say that having too much stock is a very, very common occurrence. I see it more often than not. And then that third one about having fixed overheads that are too big for your sales, that does come into play from time to time, especially when people have physical premises, but it's more likely to be one of the first two issues. So in terms of fixing your cash flow in October, the better your cash flow is across the year, the more likely you are to be able to get through that October pinch point intact. So it's almost something that it's hard to fix very quickly. It's something that you almost have to start planning now to fix for the future. If you think about cash, the reason that stock is so important, the reason that I talk about it as much as I do, and the reason that I'm so insistent on people focusing on it when it comes to their cash flow, is that when I talk about cash flow, the money should flow. The key is in the name. The cash should flow in your cash flow. And by that, I mean, when you spend money on stock, you want that money coming back to you as quickly as possible. In fact, you can pretty much guarantee, it's a pretty much a universal truth, that the faster your stock turns, the more likely you are to have good cash flow, because you pay that money out. And then as soon as it comes back to you from the consumer, in other words, you pay the money out to the supplier, you get your products, and then the quicker that turns into cash again by the customer buying it, then the easier it is for you to have money in the bank and the more cash rich your business will feel. If there is a flow, you spend some money, you buy some stock. Let's say you spend £10 on a Monday, you get £20 worth of stock if you're working on a 50% margin, or 24 if you're VAT registered, and you immediately sell that on the Tuesday, you've now got £24, and then you could buy again and over and over and over, etc., etc., etc. What happens is your money is then being replenished in your bank account frequently. The minute that you stop that flow or it slows down, it very quickly dries to a trickle. So if you spend £10 on a Monday and you get that stock in, but then it takes 6 months to a year for you to sell that stock, then all the time that you need money to buy the next round of stock, you don't have it because it's sitting there as stock. So, as I said, cash flow is a multi-layer, multifaceted issue that you need to examine from lots of different angles. But those are the three areas to start with. Do I make enough money every time I make a sale? Do I have too much stock in the business? And do I have fixed costs that are too high? And that piece about having too much stock in the business, that becomes really, really important when it comes to October, because you are going to have to build up your stock ready for Christmas if you are a business that has a Christmas peak, which admittedly not every business does, but a lot of people listening, I'm willing to bet good money that you have a Christmas peak, because small product businesses tend to have lots of lovely things, and those are great gifting items. And as soon as you have somebody who's a great gifting item, then you're likely to have a Christmas peak. So what happens is in October, we are right in the middle of that pain point. We've had to pay the money out, but we haven't had the money back in yet. So it's a real pinch point because you've bought more probably than you do at other times of the year. It is worse in October if you're then also carrying too much stock from the rest of the year. So you can see how cash flow and this pinch point gets compounded, because let's say you're carrying too much stock in general, you're carrying too much stock throughout the year. And therefore, if you've not been really managing it and being super tight on how much stock you have in, taking action to either avoid purchasing too much and bringing too much in, or to take action to discount or to move through some of the stock that isn't turning, then you don't have much cash in the bank already. And then you've also got to pay out for the Christmas products. So you can see that getting ready for this October peak is almost something that starts now. It starts now in terms of getting ready for trying to manage it better next year. And that includes everything that I just said, looking at your profits, looking at the amount of stock that you carry under normal circumstances, looking at what is not producing for you, what is stuck in your business and what you need to move through. And then also just checking that your fixed costs are in line with your sales. So doing all of those three things. Maybe not the fourth quarter, maybe you don't have time, but keeping that in your mind that these are the things that you really need to get to grips with in January so that you can start planning ahead for October. So if I were working with you on your cash flow, this is what we would be doing come January. Incidentally, my product business mastermind kicks off again in January. So if anybody listening feels like, yes, I really do need help with this, then go check it out. Go to resilientretailclub.com and look at the mastermind. It's got all the details there. So this is what we would be doing. We would be delving into those three elements, checking them, looking at them, benchmarking them against other businesses of similar size, similar products, looking at where things are working well, looking at where things could be improved. Once you've done that, almost like your health check, it's really about setting yourself some really clear plans, because cash flow is very hard to manage anyway. And it's extremely hard, or if not impossible to manage, when you don't have a clear plan of what you're actually going to be doing. So once we had delved into things like the profit margins, the stock that you're carrying and your fixed costs, the next thing that we would do would be set a sales plan. So go through the sales, your sales history, and put together a clear plan by month so that you know exactly what it is that you are aiming for when it comes to your sales. And then that will tell you how much money you're going to have coming in. Because of course, your cash flow forecast depends on you really clearly understanding how much money you're going to get into the business and how much money is going to be going out. And then you can actually map out a year ahead of time if you want. You can map out a forecast for your bank balance a year ahead of time. It is possible to do. I wish that it were easier and simpler, and I wish that there were better tools out there that I could say to you, go onto your accounting system and you can get a really simple cash flow that will show you exactly what you need to do. It's not really often that simple. Cash flow forecasting, I personally have played around with it a lot in the past, and I can't find anything better than having my own spreadsheet. So I personally, for my business, have a spreadsheet where I have sales, both confirmed and forecast, and I have all my expenses mapped out. And I could tell you now what I forecast my bank balance to be on the 31st of December. And actually, I have 2024 as well. So that is how powerful it can be when you have your cash flow, because also then you can play around and add things in and take things out and make really clear decisions. And it's absolutely the same for product businesses. There's no reason why you can't do the same thing. It's just you have to look at things slightly differently. You have to forecast your sales out So that is the first part. That is really it. To start off with, you have to make yourself a sales plan. So you've got a clear idea of how much money is going to be coming in. That's the first part of the cash flow. And then the next thing I would do if I were working with you in a cash flow would be to create a stock plan. So your stock, the question of how much stock should I have in my business, is always, always related to how much do you think you're going to sell. So creating the stock plan is a question of looking at what you think your ideal stock needs to be in the business. And then once you've created that stock plan, it allows you to then create a budget to say, okay, well, if this is what my plan is for my stock, then this is how much I'm going to be spending. This is what my budget is for stock. And once you know what your budget is for stock, you know, if I'm going to do these sales, then this is what my stock should be. And if this is what my stock is, then this is how much I'm going to have to spend and when I'm going to have to bring it in. So now you go from feeling just completely overwhelmed because you've got so much stock going on and you feel like you're buying loads and you don't really know, it feels uncontrolled, to having a really controlled look at, to right, this is my sales, this is my stock plan, this is the amount I'm going to be spending, this is when I'm going to be spending it, therefore this is what my outgoings are. And then you can build in your cash flow forecast because you know how much money you're going to have coming in or what you're forecasting to come in. You're going to know what you need to spend on stock and when, and you can pull that into your cash flow forecast. And you can also have a look at your fixed costs. So all of the bills that you know you're going to have to pay every month anyway, and any other bills that you might have that may be variable, for example, advertising costs, you can plot all of those in, and then you can actually map out and see your cash flow. It is possible to do it. I have done it with clients, and it really helps a lot. Even, to be honest, the piece of getting your sales plan into place and your stock plan into place, that can also be massively helpful. Even if you don't go the full route of having absolutely everything mapped out in a cash flow forecast, just having that sales plan and that stock plan can really help you. Because then what you need to do, once you've done all of that piece, then throughout the year, you can monitor yourself against your stock plan. You can say, right, I wanted to have £12,000 worth of stock at the end of this month, or £1 million worth of stock. How much stock do I actually have? Is it higher than I wanted it to be? Therefore, what action do I need to take? Do I need to either cancel an order that I had coming in because I don't have the money for it? Or do I need to do some kind of very targeted discount on slow moving stock in order to move that through, liquidate it, and then get myself back to my plan? And I think that's what makes it so tricky for product businesses at this time of year. If you don't have a stock plan, to be honest, even if you have a stock plan, it can still be very tricky. You may still have to rely on some kind of line of credit or loan in order to purchase your Christmas stock. That's not to say that you won't. However, if you are managing your stock tighter the rest of the year, it may well be that you are able to just have a little bit more space in your cash flow. And at the very, very least, you are able to say to yourself, well, look, I know I've paid this money, but I can see that I've got these sales forecasts and everything should flow through and I should be absolutely fine. And also you can update it month by month. So if you're doing better than you expected, it'll be telling you that you need to be buying more stock. And if you're not doing as well as you had hoped, or you have a wobbly month or something like that, it will actually even tell you, okay, well, therefore you need to buy less going forward. It's the closest thing you'll get to a crystal ball in your business. And it is a piece of work to set up. It often takes even a few weeks. When I'm working with people one-to-one, we go back and forth. We look at all the different elements. We look at the sales forecast. We look at the stock plan. We create budgets. We also will delve into things like product mixes to understand a bit more about what's going on and where you need to put more money into your stock and less, depending on what's working or not working. We will also be looking at things like a break-even analysis, so double checking all of the fixed costs, and as well looking at things like profit margins, so going through pricing and profits, because that's the other piece of this. The better your profit margin, the easier your cash flow and the easier it is to manage at this time of year. Because if you think about it, if we do it as easy maths, if you have something that is £12, let's assume you're VAT registered, just to make this easy. If you had something that was 50% margin, it would cost you £5. So £5 is the cost price, 50% margin. So then effectively you're doubling that to £10 plus put VAT on top. So 50% margin, your item will cost you £5. Now, if you had a 60% margin, then that item would be costing you £4. So you can see that the better your margin, the less money you have to spend on stock. So if you are feeling really pinched at this time of year, then you can just even start now by asking yourself, okay, are my profit margins okay? Have I checked them recently? Is there any room for them to go up? Because then actually I'd need less stock to do the same sales. Am I carrying a bit too much stock? Do I in general carry too much stock during the year? And that's something that I need to make a much more concerted effort of actually working through. And then the final piece that you'd have to ask yourself then is, are my fixed costs okay? Am I over exerting myself compared to my sales? So looking at those things would be a good place to start, and then making a note to yourself, okay, in the first quarter, this is a really great time for you to be doing that work, to be delving into looking at your profit margins and your stock and your sales forecast, so that next year, this time in October, as I said, it may still be that it's a pinch point. It will still be a pinch point, but it may be less of a pinch point. It may feel more controlled, and it may just feel altogether more spacious, more comfortable. And you are going to be able to sit there with a document that tells you what you're doing and why you've got so much stock, what the plan is. And it just overall feels much more controlled than just this awful feeling of all my money's gone out the door for Christmas stock and I'm just sitting here waiting for the sales to come back in. So there you have it. That is what I would do in terms of if you came to me and we were working on your cash flow, that is where I would start. Just at the very least, know that you're not alone. Do go check out the Resilient Retail Club. We have a lot of resources. We have the whole course version of Tame Your Tiger, my book. So if you've read the book, but you prefer to watch videos or you want to have templates, that is the place to go check it out inside Resilient Retail Club. And of course, if you are looking to do this kind of work on your business, to get to grips with your business numbers, to feel more in control, to feel more prepared for the October pinch point next year, then the Resilient Retail Club Product Business Mastermind is a fantastic place for you to work with me one-to-one. We talk every single week. We have opportunity to work on this over time at your pace and to really get to grips with the key numbers so that you have everything that you need in place to work on your cash flow. So go check out resilientretailclub.com. You can see details of the membership and details of the mastermind. The membership has no minimum sign up, so you can go check out our resources and see what works for you. I hope that helps. Why not head over to Instagram at Resilient Retail Club. Let me know what you thought of today's episode. Let me know how your October pinch point is going. And if you have a moment to rate and review the podcast in iTunes, it is hugely helpful. I should say Apple Podcasts, I always get that wrong. And if you are listening in Spotify, then do please head over and rate the podcast in the app. And of course, if you follow or subscribe, you will be the first to know about every new episode, which comes out every Thursday. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow, or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.